With those words of welcome and congratulations said, I now have the pleasure of introducing our student speaker, your permanent class president, Emma Culotta. Ms. Culotta hails from Houston. She received her undergraduate degree from Tulane University in New Orleans. Prior to law school, she was deputy clerk of the Supreme Court of Texas. She served as research editor of the Texas Law Review and a board member of Texas Law Fellowships. She was recently inducted into the Chancellor's Honor Society. And after graduation, she'll begin her practice of law here in Austin. Please join me in welcoming to the podium your permanent class president, Emma Culotta.
Thank you, Dean Farnsworth. Good afternoon to the class of 2022 and to all the family, friends, faculty, and staff gathered to celebrate today. This April, I drove down to the Woodlands, just north of Houston, to watch a good friend compete in an Ironman competition. An Ironman, for those who may not be familiar, is a long-distance triathlon. It consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a marathon run raced in that order. It's an incredible demonstration of human strength and grit. If you asked me to come up with an analogy for what 1L felt like, I think being woken up at 5 a.m., thrown into a cold pool of water, and told to swim 2.5 miles gets pretty close. That first event sets the tone for the rest of the race, yet we were just getting our feet wet. The workload as a 1L was a shock to the system, and, pardon the pun, it was hard to keep our heads above water at times. In my 1L con law class, for example, the professor often had us choose our seats for the day based on whether we agreed more with the majority opinion from that day's reading assignment or the dissenting opinion. There was no telling who would get called on any given day. So one day, a classmate sitting on the majority side gets cold called and asked to give his reasons for supporting that opinion. He does a fine job, and the professor moved on. The next day, we were still discussing that case, a Commerce Clause opinion, for sure. But that classmate had moved over to the dissent side of the room. Defying the adage that lightning and law professors never strike the same place twice, the professor called on him again, asking, "Counselor, what happened overnight to make you change seats to the dissent side today?" And this beloved classmate answered truthfully and to everyone's amusement, "Oh, well, I read the case." Little moments like this, introducing humor and vulnerability into an otherwise tense environment, were critical to shaping the camaraderie that I know we all experienced as Texas law students. I personally experienced it after that first exam information session put on by the Student Affairs Office. I left the atrium totally overwhelmed by the amount of work that preparing for 3 law school exams requires, and I broke down in tears at my locker. A classmate from another section saw me and said, "Hey, why don't we go for a walk outside?" And she led me around the building while we shared our anxieties about the upcoming exams. When everything shut down on March 13th, 2020, I felt some comfort knowing that my classmates were feeling what I was feeling. Nervous, disappointed, a little afraid, and thinking what I was thinking. Are we going pass-fail? That year-long swim through 1L, made all the more challenging by the COVID-19 pandemic that sent us home to sit in front of lonely Zoom backgrounds for months, was made bearable and even at times enjoyable by the group of people receiving degrees here today. And thus began the grueling 112-mile bike ride through 2L. And I think the analogy has to be to 112 miles on a stationary bike in your kitchen or bedroom that you haven't left for weeks. They say 2L is the school year that works you to death. And work we did. We worked through the polarizing 2020 election and its aftermath, seeing in real time how important lawyers are to the existence of democracy and how serious a responsibility we have to restore and protect the integrity of our core institutions. We worked through Winter Storm Uri. While pipes froze and the line to HEB wrapped around the block, we exchanged tips on melting snow to flush the toilet and offered groceries and shelter to those without food or power. We worked inside the classroom and out. So many of you did incredible things to support the communities and causes that you care about, through clinics, journals, and student organizations, taking on leadership roles, and in the case of the inspiring group of students who founded Law Students for Black Lives, forming a new organization to bring racial justice to the fore in our curriculum. Despite COVID and climate crises, we survived 2L and dismounted those stationary bikes, grateful that all that was left was to run a marathon. What, like it's hard? But it is hard. And though law school, like a triathlon, is an individual sport, it takes a team effort. To the cheer squads who believed in us, who supported us, and who empowered us to define our own visions of success, thank you. Law school has been a long race for you too, and we could not have done it without your help, your sacrifices, and your encouragement. I want to give a personal shout out to my 1L boyfriend, Weber, who was so supportive throughout law school, he became my 3L husband. Thank you to our professors, not only for teaching us to think like lawyers, but also for showing us how to act like compassionate professionals and for bringing the same enthusiasm for teaching to Zoom School of Law that you brought in person. Thank you to Dean Bangs and the Student Affairs Office for always looking out for our well-being and for helping us deal with the unique challenges that our class faced during our time as law students. And thank you to my fellow classmates for being the most supportive, hopeful, and resilient group of people to learn with. To those of you going into public service after graduation, thank you. The work the work you are doing is important, and the world needs excellent lawyers like you. To those of us going into the private sector, let us not forget our ethical obligation of pro bono service, and let us use our knowledge, our skills, and where those are lacking, our wallets to serve our communities. Fortunately, our 3L marathon came with many highs that made putting one foot in front of the other a little easier. We returned to in-person learning and reconnected with old friends in new spaces on campus. We brought key community building events like the TLF auction, the Law Prom, and Assault and Flattery's annual theatrical production back to their former glory. And the 3L Hodges Society, the Hodges Society 3Ls rather, finally got to take their 1L boat cruise. Today, we crossed the finish line, and that is a huge accomplishment. Let's enjoy this moment and feel proud of ourselves, because we earned it. There will be more races to run, and in fact, for many of us, the next race starts on Monday. But we know how to swim, we know how to bike, we know how to run, and we know we're not alone. We are Ironmen with a finishing time of 3 years, but who's counting? And today is a celebration of the hard work it took to get here. So, here's to us. Cheers.